Hey everyone, welcome to Be the Change. My name is Lily Mott, and today I'm going to be talking about how change comes when you optimize both your strengths and your weaknesses. This week's guest is Ishita Mann, who is a changemaker and entrepreneur who is focused on helping young individuals navigate their futures with clarity and confidence. I recorded this episode back in the fall, so I will definitely have to have Ishita on checking in with changemakers to update us on all of her work as the first Indian female president at the Students' Union at the University of Saskatchewan. She is involved in so many different organizations, and she has many more titles than I just mentioned. So, without further ado, let's dive in to this conversation with Ishita Mann.
Hi, my name is Ishita Mann, SVM. I'm an award-winning change maker who really works towards equitable opportunity, mental health re-education, reconciliation, and redevelopment policies through the lens of collective impact. I have been recognized through not just civil honors from my country, but also international honors as well. Most notably, the Saskatchewan Volunteer Medal, for which I was the youngest winner, as well as the Queen's Platinum Jubilee medalist on behalf of Canada. I've also been recognized as a top 25 under 25 and now a top 29 and under. As a social entrepreneur, I have founded several nonprofits that have scaled internationally, all with the collective mission of helping young individuals navigate their futures with clarity and confidence. And I really do fervently believe in that because more often than not, I think sometimes there's just so many opportunities around us that it's difficult for people to make a choice and see where their skills best fit. But in reality, people need to recondition themselves to the philosophy that they don't need to fit an opportunity needs to fit them instead. I'm a student at the University of Saskatchewan, and I'm currently in my fourth year of a Bachelor's of Science in Cellular, Physiological, and Pharmacological Sciences, and I'm hoping to get into medicine super soon. But alongside managing all of this, I am the first ever Indian woman to get elected into the Undergraduate Students' Union. So I work full time alongside studying full time.
That is so exciting, and we are definitely going to have so much to talk about. I would love to get started by just having you tell me a little bit more about how you got started with this work. What motivated you to get involved in change making?
Yeah, no, of course. I mean, honestly, it's been a lot of ups and downs because I think people tend to, think of growth as this linear process, but it's fortunately and unfortunately not. It is a learning process that, takes its own ebbs and flows, and we have to be able to adapt to those changes. And I had to face a lot of these changes myself when I was immigrating from India to Canada with my family. And I could, very easily see as we moved and as we try to get settled in this country, people have varying degrees and varying levels of access and privilege. And that honestly dictates the accessibility you have to opportunities. And it is when I attended the SHAD program at Canada, which is a national STEAM initiative, whereby around 500 students every year get placed in different university campuses for about a month to essentially understand STEAM and entrepreneurship initiatives. I really was able to visualize that discrepancy of accessibility between myself and my peers. And that for me was very difficult to accommodate to. I couldn't imagine essentially why someone who had perhaps the same statistics as I do, same capabilities, same skill sets, but perhaps a far more expanded range and platter when it comes to picking opportunities, mentorship experiences, jobs, scholarships, but I didn't have that. And it didn't really sit well with me. And when I went home, I didn't just go home as someone who was upset by this. I think I went home far more sensitized to the discrepancies that exist in my community. I suddenly wasn't blind or perhaps, non-cognizant of the challenges that students around me go through. And I could visualize what that struggle is. And because of that, I really felt motivated to utilize my knowledge, my power, my platform for something beneficial. And that is sort of how I came into this advocacy stream.
Thank you so much for explaining that. And I think that your position as Students' Union president, and also the first Indian female president of the Students' Union, of course, puts you in a great position to represent your fellow students, for example, and also to make your voice heard. Can you tell me about why you chose to run for that position and why you chose to make change in that leadership role in particular?
For sure, and that's a really wonderful example. And I mean, I don't even need to necessarily preach it to because you're running such a, in-depth platform yourself, Lily. I think essentially I know what it felt like to not be seen, to not be heard, to not be acknowledged. And I never wanted anyone else to go through that, especially my younger brother who was gonna be coming into university. I want to be able to exercise my skills and my capabilities to bring about positive change in the world because if not us, there is no one else who will step up. And unfortunately, that is how the world is progressing. And when it comes to USSU specifically, I remember it being a very challenging time even running for the position. I faced a lot of questions about my intentions for running, specifically because I was a woman, or perhaps that my education wasn't in political sciences, but rather, very much rooted in medical sciences. And I had to navigate through those questions a lot. It was difficult to face that discriminatory nature of these political forms as well. And something became very clear to me is that there aren't very many spaces for young women to exercise traditional leadership roles. Those are spaces that are very much overdominated by men, unfortunately. And because of that, there are these prejudices and biases that we resonate with traditional leadership. One would probably assume that a leader in my position would be very stern, very hard-headed, very much focused on screaming and shouting to get things done. But things can be different. Leadership styles can be unique. And when I think of women in these traditional roles, I try to honor the femininity that we have. I try to be very empathetic and very compassionate as a leader. I try to follow, lateral leadership as much as I can and incorporate other people's opinions rather than always setting mine first. I recognize that sometimes the best way to get things done isn't by screaming or shouting, but rather by showing people what possible solutions could be. So I think that using these experiences and these philosophies and what I understood about the state of leadership at this point of time when I was running, I think it just cemented my fervent belief that we need more women in these roles. And that is why I stuck by my decision and I chose to take on this role.
I think that is so interesting, and I'm really glad that you talked about leadership styles and this perception of what people should be doing in these roles when that might not always be the right way or the way that you do it as a leader. So, can you tell me about some of the changes that you've been advocating for on your campus or that you'd like to see in the future?
Yeah, no, I have divided my year into three different realms. So, number one, I've been focusing very intensely on student wellness. And instead of defining wellness on the terms of just physical well-being, we have really made it far more holistic this year by keeping people's spiritual health, mental health, emotional health in mind. And this principle is very heavily guided by the philosophy of the medicine wheel that Indigenous people have come up with in Saskatchewan. I live on Treaty 6 territory, and so trying to incorporate that principle as much as I can, because we believe in Treaty 6 territory that when either of these realms goes out of balance, you as an individual are far more susceptible to disease or harm or any sort of emotional burden. So keeping that in mind for wellness. We focused a lot on accessibility, and what that means is, are you able to complete your post-secondary education in a financially safe and sound, as well as have a safe environment to do that? Are university campus spaces equitable as well as accessible to you physically? Keeping those directions in mind too. And lastly, we have focused very heavily on student empowerment. As I spoke earlier about The challenges that I have faced, even when I was running for this position, or just in general throughout my leadership journey, I definitely realized that young people need someone that can consistently motivate them and prompt them into pursuing leadership opportunities. We need someone that can tell them that, hey, I believe in you. I think that you're resilient enough to take on this load and go about your day. And I really prioritize that in my year. And so we have been working with student groups across campus. We have been able to successfully engage more than 3,500 students into joining and starting clubs this year. We have seen far more interest in even union-related activities this year, with more people ready to step up for these executive roles than there has ever been before. I've also been personally a very big advocate for adequate housing initiatives in Saskatoon. Because our city is a university city, it is becoming far more overcrowded, and because of that, housing options are becoming increasingly limited. Many young students are being susceptible to skyrocketing rents, in inhospitable living conditions. Some students are honestly even just coming up to our offices with bags and luggages and asking for us to find them a home because they're from a different country and they have absolutely no idea how Saskatoon works. And we have been really working with the city and the province of Saskatchewan to ensure that we are enrolling ourselves in a housing accelerator program. I even gained national notoriety for this initiative, and I was very happy to be partaking in it as well, and something that I'm super excited for the future executive to take on as well. I do think that there is a lot more work to be done and we continue to progress. But we really think that these are key aspects to post-secondary education that can change a person's opinion on higher education and even perhaps shape their opinion on how governance systems work. I think the biggest thing that we've gained this year is more transparency with the union. People actually know what the union is doing and trying to achieve. And I think that is far bigger of an accomplishment than anything else could be.
I think that is all so exciting, and I can't wait to follow along with all of this work that you're going to be doing. So, I have one more question for you. Lots of young people, especially high school and college students, want to create change, but they may not know where to get started. What advice do you have for those people who may be listening?
The biggest thing that I would say is don't expect progress to be immediate. You have to put in the effort and you have to face failure and learn how to handle that, as well as you need to learn how to handle success. So, first, sit down with yourself and self reflect on how you react in these situations. Recognize what your strengths and your weaknesses are, and find a way to optimize both. Having a weakness doesn't necessarily mean that you have to, work towards actively avoiding it. No, you have to see how you can incorporate that uniqueness about you in how you lead and how you create change. Because I promise you, when you're able to optimize both sides of yourself, your powerful side as well as your vulnerable one, you will be able to create something that is so uniquely yours that it can't be replicated, and it will be something that would be life changing. I want you to understand that there are people that believe in you, that understand that you have the skills, the experiences, as well as the competencies to enact the change. All you need to do is be a little bit strategic, a bit more mindful, and a bit more conscientious. And I assure you that any endeavor you take on will always turn out successful.
I really liked talking with Ishita, and I was really inspired by her advice at the end of the episode. I haven't asked her yet, but I really hope that she listens to this episode and she'll agree to come on checking in with changemakers, because I definitely think I need to get a full update on her year as Students' Union president. I want to highlight her last piece of advice about not only accepting your weaknesses, but using them to your advantage, just as much as your strengths. I think that is great advice to keep in mind in so many different facets of life. Change comes when you optimize both your strengths and your weaknesses. Thank you so much for listening to this episode, and you can find Ishita on LinkedIn to get connected with her, and I've included that link in the description of this episode. If you want to talk about anything I mentioned, please reach out to me by email at lily@bethechangepodcast.org or on Instagram at Be The Change Media Network. I am working on expanding Be The Change Media Network, which means bringing you more inspiring stories from amazing guests. If you enjoyed this episode, I would really appreciate it if you could leave the podcast a rating and a comment, because it will help these stories to reach, educate, and inspire more people. And I would also love to hear your thoughts and your feedback. Tune in for my next episode, but until then, be the change you wish to see in the world. Bye, guys!